Why should a teacher choose to include content elaboration in their course? It wouldn't be that hard to find valid reasons. For example, to support learning while also varying their teaching practice, or to obtain feedback on students' learning progress and the effectiveness of the instruction, as well as to gain new insights for course design and assessment. But what about the how? What could those look like? That is, how can the teacher in practice support students in effectively elaborate the content? How can they approach the design of this learning event and what actions can they take? To understand this, we first need to identify the process underlying the elaboration of content. Let's imagine a process structured in 4 phases. First of all, the student starts with a general overview or rereading of the collected content in order to grasp the overall topic and identify its focus. They can then focus on individual concepts, the various building blocks that make up the content, in order to understand and explore them further if needed. With a further step, they transform all the collected and elaborated information into a new product that describes the main ideas and their relationships. Finally, the student can move on to reviewing their own reworking to ensure that what they have produced is indeed a synthesis of the main concepts and the connections they have identified. In short, a final wrap-up. Now, starting from these steps, how can the teacher best support them? As we mentioned, in the first phase, the student begins with an initial viewing of the content and the identification of the focus, which will then guide the entire reworking process. It can therefore be very helpful for the teacher themselves to present the material, explaining the reason for its selection and providing the interpretive key. Alternatively, they can suggest a focal question to be answered or provide a list of key concepts to explore further, supporting the students with dedicated activities, such as a guided discussion conducted online in asynchronous mode. In the second phase of the elaboration process, the student carries out the actual analysis work, identifying the concepts and exploring them in depth to find connections between them and with the prior knowledge already at their disposal. Thus, even if indirectly and most often implicitly, elaboration also involves an initial recall of knowledge, retrieval, and a self-assessment. In fact, the student will be led to wonder whether, upon reading a particular term in the notes, a light bulb will light up for him, or if he has only a vague recollection of it, and it would therefore be better to refresh his memory. As a result, the teacher can propose, for example, quick quizzes accompanied by feedback that allow, on the one hand, the recall of useful knowledge, and on the other, the self-assessment of what has been acquired during elaboration. Alternatively, role-play activities can be used in which students are asked to become experts on a portion of the content and present it to the class. In short, the teacher can make use of all those activities that encourage the student to delve deeper into the topics covered and to seek connections with the field of application. The third phase allows the student to move on to practice to actually transform the content. This is where the student selects elements, relationships, and hierarchies to turn them into something else, such as a bullet point summary or a diagram. But regardless of the format, the teacher can support this phase by using, for example, the elaborative questioning method. In short, elaborative questioning refers to asking questions about how and why things work, and then guiding the formulation of answers. So, through individual work or peer collaboration, the teacher can encourage students to compare ideas, strategies, methods, and different processes within the same general topic, further stimulating elaboration and the creation of new meaning. As the final phase of the process, the student reaches the final wrap-up, the review, and concluding synthesis. To guide toward the final result, the teacher can provide different types of content. Examples include work previously completed by students from past years, or a wireframe, a skeleton to be completed and enriched with meaningful elements and relationships. To conclude, the final output of the content elaboration process summarizes the original content, reinterpreted based on the experiences and knowledge of the person who produced it. The teacher can support students throughout each phase of this process, or simply encourage them and ensure this learning event is not overlooked, as it is essential for meaningful and lasting learning. How? The leverage of assessment is often effective in this regard, but without altering the structure of the course, other means can also be employed. For example, the teacher can appeal to the pride and personal satisfaction a student may feel when the quality of their work is recognized. In this way, a well-done piece of work could become content to share and discuss with the entire class and to use as an example in future years.